Hi guys, Lindsay here, and today I'm going to take a few minutes and talk about dividing fractions. And if you see floating above my head here, the method is written out for you. It says find the reciprocal of the second fraction and then multiply. So let's take a look at an example. We've got 3/8 divided by 1/2. And our directions say find the reciprocal of the second fraction. So let's rewrite this. We'll leave the first fraction alone. So we're going to leave 3/8 alone. Reciprocal means taking the top and the bottom and flipping them. So we're not going to do that with the first fraction. We're going to do it only with the second one. So 1/2, I'm going to rewrite that as 2/1. And once I've done that, I can change that division sign into a multiplication sign. And if you know me, you know that I like to use a dot for multiplication so it doesn't get confused with the variable x. And now, it's just a multiplication question. I multiply straight across. 3 times 2 is 6. 8 times 1 is 8. 6/8 is the correct answer, but you probably know that we can reduce that. Anytime that you've got a fraction that can be divided by anything, where top and bottom can be divided by anything other than 1, we should reduce it. And in this case, anytime that you've got two even numbers, you can kind of quickly divide them by 2. And if 6 divided by 2 is 3 and 8 divided by 2 is 4, that looks like that fraction's in lowest terms. It can't go any lower than that. So 3/4 is our answer. So why don't you take a second and try that one following the same method I just went through, and then I'll check your answer with mine in a minute. Okay guys, hopefully you did that question. And before I come up with the solution with you to make sure you and I are on the same page, I'd like to just talk for a quick second about why we find the reciprocal of the second fraction, or show you a bit of a proof of it. If you look over here, I've got 10 divided by 2. And you probably in your head really quickly can tell me that 10 divided by 2 is 5. But let's imagine that those were fractions. Let's make them into fractions. Anytime you want to make a whole number into a fraction, if I put it over 1, 10/1 means the same thing as 10. And 2/1 means the same thing as 2. So we know in our heads that the answer to that question is 5. But let's test it doing what we did over here. Let's take 10/1 and leave it alone. But let's change that division sign into a multiplication sign. And I just did what I said I usually don't do, which is use an X. Let's use that dot just to stay consistent. And instead of writing 2/1, I'm going to write 1/2. And then I'm going to multiply 10 times 1, which is 10. And 1 times 2, which is 2. And then since a fraction is just a division question, I could, in my head or in my calculator, 10 divided by 2. The answer is 5, and that proves that that works. If you flip that second fraction and multiply, it's going to work for you. And hopefully you did the same to this one. So let's do that. Let's leave this 1/4 alone. Let's change the division into multiply. And let's flip this. Let's make this 16/5. Now I'm going to multiply straight across. 1 times 16 is 16. 4 times 5, that's 20. And 16/20 is the right answer. If you need to reduce it, you might be able to look at that and decide really quickly how to reduce it. But if you struggle with reducing fractions, like I said over here, start with little numbers. If those both are divisible by 2, if they're both even numbers, start with 2. So I'm going to divide by 2 and divide by 2. And my answer is now 8/10. But then I say, wait a minute, I can actually still divide by 2. Those are still both even numbers. So let's do that one more time. So 8 divided by 2 is 4. 10 divided by 2 is 5. It's okay if it takes a couple steps to reduce these. You still end up in the same place as you would if you did it in one step. And 4/5, the only number that'll divide evenly into 4 and 5, is 1. So we know that we've reduced that correctly. So I'm going to make myself a little bit of room, and then we're going to take a look at some examples with mixed numbers and division. Okay guys, I'm back, and sometimes the hardest part of these videos is erasing that board. So I've got 2 more examples here for you, and they are still division of fraction examples, except this time we're dealing with mixed numbers. And when I say mixed numbers, I mean I've got a whole number and a fraction in both of these. And wouldn't it be nice if we could just divide straight across 2 divided by 1, but we can't do that. We actually have to make these into improper fractions before we can divide them. So what I mean by that is I need to make this into a fraction with no mixed number. So let's do that. If I want to make this whole 2 into quarters, hopefully it makes sense to you that there would be one. So I've done this before in other videos, but I'm going to do it again. 1 would be the same as 4 quarters. So hopefully that makes sense to you. And if that logic makes sense, then hopefully it makes sense that 2 would be the same as 8 quarters. So I've got 8 quarters represented in this 2, but then I've got that guy as well. So I've actually got 9 quarters. 2 times 4 is 8, plus 1 is 9. And we're going to use that method again. And I'm going to leave this division sign alone until I'm ready to find the reciprocal here. So here, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to take my whole number, the 1 times 8. 1 times 8 is 8, plus 3. So that is 11. And now I've got 2 fractions. They're not mixed numbers, so I can go ahead and write the first one the way I see it, change the division sign to a multiplication sign, and flip this. And my final answer would be 9 times 8, which is 72, and 4 times 11, which is 44. That's the correct answer. That is right. But if you want to reduce that, you want to figure out how many times 44 goes into 72, and it goes in 1 whole time, and then you want to figure out how much you have left over. And maybe you're really comfortable with doing that in your head. I'm just going to grab my calculator. Maybe you're comfortable with doing that in your head. If you're not, what you can do is you can do 72, subtract 44. So you want to do that with me maybe. Grab your calculator. So I've got 72. And I've decided that it's gone, 44 has gone into 72 1 time. So I'm going to subtract 44 from that. And I'm going to see what I have left over. I've got 28 left over on my screen. So that's my leftovers. So 1 and 28 44ths, which if you reduce that, harder when you use the calculator. It's easier if I just do it in my head, but it's nice to throw the calculator in once in a while. 28 divided by 44 is 7 over 11, or you could think about it like dividing on both of those by 4. So I've got 1 and 7 over 11. So that's my final answer. Reduced. That was right. So was that. But that makes the most sense because it's in its lowest terms. And answers always make the most sense when they're in their lowest terms. Why don't you take a minute and try the one here above me. Make sure you start with making those improper fractions or those mixed numbers into improper fractions. And then doing what I did over here to multiply. And then if you have to reduce, you can go ahead and do that. All right, guys, so hopefully you took a minute and you did that question. And we know that step 1 for a question like this is making our mixed numbers into improper fractions. And our method that we've been following is take the whole number, multiply it by the denominator. So 3 times 2, which is 6, plus 1, that's 7. Denominator stays the same. I'm going to do the same to here. 5 times 4, which is 20, plus that 3 is 23. Denominator stays the same. Now I'm going to leave that division sign there because I haven't found the reciprocal yet of the second one. I'm going to, though. I'm going to do that next. I'll just draw a line there so it's a little easier to see. So 7 over 2 stays the same. Let's turn that into a multiplication sign. 23 over 4 flips. We're now 4 over 23. And if I erase this, I'm going to give myself a little bit more space over here to write the answer for you. So now I'm just going to multiply straight across. 7 times 4, which is 28. And 2 times 23, which is 46. That's the answer. That's the right answer, but if you can reduce it, you might as well. And again, if I look at this and I can think of any number that divides evenly into those, and if it takes a couple steps to reduce, that's okay. They're both even numbers, so I'm going to stick with dividing both top and bottom by 2. 28 divided by 2, that's 14. 46 divided by 2, that's 23. And it looks to me like we can't go any farther than that. So our final answer is 14 over 23. So hopefully that clarifies a bit for you, not only dividing fractions, but dividing fractions when you're dealing with mixed numbers.